Hey there, super friends. It's Joey with Last Point Gaming. Today is Thursday, April 1st, 2021. And of all days to get this show going again, this seems like the perfect one. How y'all doing? I know it's been a while, and we'll talk about all of it later. It's going to be some changes to how we do things, the new normal and all that happy jazz. But today I just want to gush about a game that I am super in like with, and that is Phasmophobia, which is weird. I don't usually play horror games. I don't really watch horror movies. Husband kind of politely requests that I don't, because, well, they fuck with me. That's just how it is. It's anywhere from 3 days to 6 weeks of jumping at every shadow and every noise, and even though logical brain says, you know you're being an idiot, right? Rabbit brain just does rabbit brain things. So I don't usually engage with the horror genre in really any capacity. But I used to watch Ghost Hunters. What were their names? I don't remember now. All I can think of is Adam and Jamie, but that's Mythbusters. Grant? Jason? I don't know. Sounds about right. Anyway, yeah, I used to watch it way back in the day when we had cable, a decade ago. Oh god, even longer than that. Whatever. So, originally, husband and I were playing it together, and then husband Sage and I started playing, and Bird played every once in a while with us, and Bird still plays every once in a while with me and Sage. But husband has gotten bored with it, so it's usually me and Sage playing, and on the one map we play on interior decorator mode. There is a cat photo, and Sage always steals it. It's the Tanglewood map. She always steals it and a bunch of other stuff and creates a cat shrine outside, of course, because we don't want to get hunted while we're screwing around doing silly shit. Alright, so this first episode we're going to talk about, the basics of the game, what you should know going in. And then I'll do another episode, fingers crossed, tomorrow. Y'all know me, I have a really sketchy relationship with time, and pandemic time is just even sketchier. So we'll do a second episode with more things that have been observed, things I've learned through watching streamers, yada yada. Alright, so the basics of the game. The whole shtick is you are a paranormal investigator, and apparently you're a really cheap one. Though, I suppose all paranormal investigators are probably kind of cheap. I don't suppose there's too many people that pay for that. So, you and or your team, depending on if you're doing a solo run or with other players, you can play with up to 4 members on your team, 4 people in the same lobby. And you and or your team are going into the location to determine what type of entity is haunting. And then, according to, I don't know if it's the game description or one of the little blurbs that pops up on the loading screen or whatever, they send in another team after you to do, the cleansing or the exorcism or whatever, which I think would be an interesting direction for the game to eventually go, is adding the mode of you're on the cleanup team, and you're going through and gathering, pieces you need to do the ritual of removal or whatever. But so your job is just to determine what type of ghost it is. When you're in your your player lobby. There's a select job button. You click that. An outline of the United States comes up. It's weird that it's the U.S. to me because based on some of the spellings on like the loading screens, like the little messages on the loading screens and stuff, it seems like the creator might be European, but whatever, I don't question. And there will be like little location markers on the map with the flag, kind of like on Google Maps or whatever, with the name of the map. And you'll have anywhere from like 2 to 5 to select from, and the maps are random. They did add a difficulty slider to each contract. When you click on the little location flag with the map name, it will have a slider that you can choose between the difficulties you have available to you. There are 3 difficulty levels: amateur, intermediate, and professional. And we'll get into the differences between the 3, I think, in this episode, hopefully. You start out with only having access to amateur, unless they change that since they added the slider, but I don't, as far as I am aware. You start out with only access to amateur, then unlock access to intermediate at a certain level, and then at a higher level you unlock access to professional. Where is my mask? I'm gonna have to pause y'all real quick in a minute here, but before we get to the talkie box, let's see here. So yeah, then you select a job, you select your difficulty level out of what you have available. I'm gonna pause y'all real quick. Okay, so you select your location, you select your difficulty, you click you click the select button on the screen, and then it goes back out to the lobby, and you can add equipment if you have equipment to add. You have basic starter equipment, you always have that, and then additional equipment you have to purchase as you make money from doing contracts. So there is a maximum number of each piece of equipment you can take on a run or on a contract, and it'll tell you. And if everybody's trying to add their equipment, it'll, like, whoever hits the add button first, their equipment gets in, and everybody else does not. Alright, I gotta pause y'all again. Okay, so where was I? Select job, add equipment, and then everybody readies up, and you click start. Once everybody's readied up, the start button is clickable. You click it, and everybody starts loading in. I love coffee. I actually don't love coffee all that much. I just live off of caffeine. It's not very healthy. Don't recommend. But because I don't love coffee as, like, the actual flavor of coffee, it takes me a longer time to drink it, and so it's less dangerous than when I was taking the caffeine pills. Because, man, those just go right down. It's pretty easy to lose track of how much you've had. Anyway, so you load in. Your whole team loads into your, like, mobile ghost hunting office, which is in the back of, like, a box truck, I guess. Not a big one, just a small one, but in there you'll find a whiteboard in the back right corner if you're, like, looking in from the bay doors in the back of the truck. On the right, you'll have the whiteboard. On the left, you'll have a computer monitor with a clickable mouse and keyboard. Those are for shifting around the views with the night vision camera, and we'll get to that. The whiteboard will have your 4 objectives. The first objective is always identify the ghost. The other 3 objectives are pretty random. And there are things like, get evidence of paranormal activity with a motion sensor, with an EMF reader, get a ghost photo, witness a ghost event, survive a hunt, prevent a hunt with a crucifix, smudge the ghost location, burn the little white sage stick. Trying to think of what else. I don't know. They're pretty random, and they're all stuff like that. They do vary in difficulty, like get evidence with EMF reader and motion sensor, pretty easy. If you are afraid of life, getting the ghost photo is a little bit harder, because when the ghost appears, you kind of shriek and jump and forget how to take photos. At least I do. Prevent a hunt with a crucifix can be kind of touchy. Alright, so then you have, closer to the bay doors, on your left is your shelves with your equipment, and on the right is your big old screen, like it's huge. And on there is a mini map of the house. It's not very detailed, you can just see where doors, windows, walls are, and when your team members are in the house, you can see their movements with green circles. If you place motion sensors in the house, which is an item you have to buy later, it's not part of the starter kit, you'll see a red line appear on the map, and then when the plane is breached, it'll turn green and it'll beep, so you can watch for ghost movement through motion sensors. You have your sanity monitor below that, which tracks each individual's sanity level as well as the group average, which will be important later, and we'll talk about that. There is the sensor board. We don't really use the sound sensor, so I don't really know how it works. And then there's the activity monitor board, which I don't know what their logic is there, but it monitors the activity in the house, and you can't really tell a whole lot from it, but if you learn how to read it, and that takes a little finesse and experience, you can find EMF 5 on it. We'll get into what that means. Alright, so you pick up the key. Always pick up the key. It's on the desk that the computer sits on across from the whiteboard. You can carry 3 items at a time, including your flashlight, which is fucking annoying. Another point of note, if you get this game and your friend gets this game and you decide that you're going to play together and you're going on your first run, you both only have starter items, you will only get 1 flashlight. I would really love to see it be changed that on starter items only, when nobody loads items in, it automatically loads 1 flashlight for each player. Even the shitty flashlight. So there's 2 different flashlights. There's the regular flashlight, the default one you start with in your starter kit, and you can buy more of them. And then there's the strong flashlight. As the name would indicate, it is better. I do recommend them. But you will only have 1 flashlight. You do have 2 UV lights, which one can kind of function as a flashlight, just not as good. We'll get into that. So you can carry up to 3 pieces of equipment at a time, but only 1 in your primary hand. However, your flashlight, and this is why the UV light is, this is probably the biggest downside of the UV light in place of a flashlight. With your flashlight, you can press T to put it on your shoulder and turn it on. So you don't have to carry it in your primary hand to have light. So you can have your flashlight on, have light, and be carrying an EMF reader. You can't do that with the UV light. For the UV light to be on, it has to be in your dominant hand, your primary hand. And you don't have a secondary hand item. It's not like Skyrim where you can dual wield and have a dagger in one hand and a shield in the other or whatever. Or sword and a dagger. Can you do that? I think you can do that. I feel like you can do that. I don't know. I always used a bow and arrow. So, you load up your 3 items. It's usually best to start with flashlight, some kind of active piece of evidence gathering. EMF reader is probably the best to start. And then a kind of secondary evidence gathering piece, depending on what your objectives are and everything. You click the little keypad on, if you're facing out of the bay doors, it'll be on the same side as the board with the sanity and activity monitor and everything. Just keep it simple there. You click that, opens the bay door. Your timer, depending on your difficulty level, well, your timer does not start until you open the door of the house. Activity doesn't start until you open the door of the house. Like, opening the front door in the house is like the trigger to start everything. So, if you are on professional level, the breaker always starts in the off position. You have to go turn it on. The breaker for the location. Every other, like for amateur and intermediate, it starts in the on position. The house all starts at the same ambient temperature, and the ghost room slowly lowers in temperature. Which is why even once you buy a thermometer, it is not part of your starting equipment. It's just not wise to take it in on your first pass through. Alright, so let's get into the primary evidence gathering pieces. If you press J, it brings up your journal, and in your journal you can find, it'll give like the basics, how do you play this game, but it's very basic. Gives a description of each ghost type, strengths, weaknesses, and then there's pages for when you take photos with the digital cameras that the photos will fill in. Then it's like the last page of the journal is where you document evidence, and at the bottom of the page is a slider for ghost types. With no evidence entered, you can slide through all the ghost types. Determine the type of ghost objective will never clear until you leave the location. You seal up the truck at the end and you're done. Otherwise, you could just cycle through until you pop the objective and go, okay, that's what we're dealing with. It's like the whole point of the game. But as you enter in documentable pieces of evidence, it will filter out ghosts that don't have that piece of evidence. Each ghost has a unique combination of 3 pieces of evidence. You can enter in 3 pieces of evidence. They will only have 3. It's not like, okay, they each have 4, but only 3 of them are unique or anything like that. Each ghost only triggers 3 pieces of the documentable evidence. The only exception to this, as far as it being 3 unique pieces, is the poltergeist has a unique pairing. It's the only ghost that does. I think it's spirit box and orbs, but I'm not positive. But 2 of its 3 pieces of evidence, if they're the first 2 pieces you get, your slider at the bottom will only show poltergeist because it's the only ghost that can have it. Alright, so what are these pieces of evidence? There is EMF 5. So your EMF reader, 1 is on. You have to turn on all the equipment. You have to turn them on, Morty. They don't work if you don't turn them on. I went through our first run with my EMF reader off for 10 minutes because I didn't realize I had to turn it on. So 1 pip is the baseline. It is on and reactive. 2 pips happens when a ghost moves a door or turns on or off a light. 3 is interacted with something else in the environment, like knocked a painting off the wall, through a cup, through a plate. And 4 is supposed to be that the ghost manifested. Though, I swear to God, we've gotten 4s before, and like you didn't even get the sound effect indicating that the ghost is nearby, and you just somehow missed it. So, I don't know. I don't know about all that. And then EMF 5 is only an evidence hit. There's no event that causes it specifically, and it will replace any of the other 3 ratings. So sometimes it's like a random chance to replace it. Sometimes, you hear a door open, you find the door, you hold the EMF reader to it, and you get the 5, bam, right away. Other times, it's like you go through and get all your other evidence, you're trying to figure out what the third piece is, and you have some kind of ghost interaction. I guess 4 is a ghost event. Maybe that's... and you have some other kind of interaction. The EMF reader picks it up, and bam, suddenly it's a 5 after it's not been showing a 5 for the last 15 minutes. But it is a good piece of evidence to start narrowing down where activity is, because the ghost will always start in the ghost room. But you can get EMF readings anywhere the ghost interacts with things. Some ghosts stick pretty close to their room, other ghosts wander a lot. But it's a good way to kind of start narrowing it down. Alright, second piece, orbs. So part of your starting equipment are 3 digital recording cameras. You can go set them up in the house. Eventually you can buy tripods to mount them on, which makes it a little easier, but when you start out you do not have tripods, so you have to find a surface to put them on. You can set them on the floor, you can set them on shelves, desks. Window ledges don't seem to work, but the corner of the sink in the bathroom and the corner of the tub, anywhere that looks wide enough to set this camera down. And you can soft set those with the F key. Usually you kind of have to throw shit with the G key and hope it lands the way you want. Certain items you can soft set with F. And of course you can rebind your controls if you don't like the defaults, but I use the defaults. So you place camera. Lights in the room being off is a lot better for this endeavor, because again, it is a night... Well, you can only see orbs on night vision mode. If you click... Alright, you set the camera, you go back out to the truck. You click the mouse to cycle through any cameras active in the location, be them your cameras or cameras that are by default there. All the houses seem to have a security camera in the front that's fucking useless to you. You never get anything off of it. And then the larger maps, like the asylum, the prison, and the school, have security cameras built into them that are just there by default, and if you're lucky, sometimes you can catch some activity, like a door moving or something. So the mouse clicks between the cameras that are on at the location that you have available views through. Clicking the keyboard will toggle it between regular and night vision. You can only see orbs on night vision. So if the lights are on in the room, night vision kind of makes it all brighter, so it becomes really hard to see them, because you'll only catch them if they pass over somewhere that's in shadow, that you have a darker place on the screen. And orbs used to be the easiest piece of evidence to get. If you identified the ghost room correctly, you set up a camera, you go out to the truck, bam, you got orbs. In recent updates, they seem to have changed it that the orbs are slower to spawn and cover a smaller area. So larger rooms, you're definitely going to need more than one camera to adequately cover them. And even smaller rooms, if you have an area that's the camera angle is obstructed, you're probably going to want to place a second camera to cover that area if you're pretty sure it's the ghost room. Fingerprints. So that's the purpose of the UV light. When a ghost touches a door, window, or light switch, fingerprints, ghosts will leave fingerprints. On the doors and windows, you'll get a full handprint. On the doors, they tend to be about the middle of the door. On the windows, they can be anywhere, and they occur when the ghost knocks on the window. But in my experience, you're more likely to find them in the corners of the windows. When ghosts interact with a light switch, it will leave a fingerprint almost, like, kind of looks like a thumbprint to me. And that one in particular is very hard to see if you also have your flashlight on, because your flashlight beam kind of envelops the UV light beam. So if you're looking for fingerprints, especially on light switches, I recommend turning off your flashlight. The room light being on does occlude the visibility a little bit, but not as much as your flashlight. But of course, your best chances, especially the solitary fingerprint on the light switch plate, your best chance of being able to actually see it are with your flashlight off and the room light off. Okay, then you have Spirit Box, which is basically like a handheld short band radio with an LCD screen, and it's on static. You're looking for EVP, electronic voice phenomenon. So the Spirit Box will only work, well, it will work anywhere. Anytime you have it on, you can hear the static, and you ask a question, if you are not meeting the conditions in which a Spirit Box ghost would reply, if it is a Spirit Box ghost, you should get nothing detected. If you're not seeing that, it means that your mic connection in the game is borked. And what you need to do is Alt-Tab out of the game and then click the icon on your start bar. Don't tab back in, don't click back on the game window. Click the game icon on your start bar, and it seems to be a pretty reliable fix for it. I have never had that fix not work when we've had problems. So, to get a response, if it is a Spirit Box ghost, you have to be in the ghost room. So if you don't know where the ghost room is yet, you're flying a little blind. The lights in the room have to be off. Your flashlight can be on, but the room lights have to be off. Some ghosts, if you're playing in a team, if you're playing solo, all ghosts will respond to a person who's alone. Otherwise, like, you couldn't play solo. If you got a ghost that only responded to people in a group, you'd be hosed. But if you're playing in a group, some ghosts will only respond if you're alone, some ghosts will only respond if there's more than one player in the room, and some ghosts just don't give a shit, they'll always respond. The two big questions that you can reliably get answers on if it's a Spirit Box ghost are, where are you and how old are you? Where are you? You'll get answers like close, far, behind, next. Next means it's like next to you. How old are you? You'll get answers like old, adult, and kid. And not only will you audibly hear the answer through the radio, you'll see the answer on the LED screen, or LCD screen. Some other questions you ask, you can ask it random stuff and hope, and then you'll get answers like hurt, kill, death. What's next? Spirit Book. So, Spirit Book is for spirit writing. You place it. Generally, it works best in the ghost room, but it can write in it anywhere it paths. We have had it happen where we were between, it was either in the living room, because it was pathing between the living room and the owner's suite, into the owner's suite bedroom, all the way into the bathroom. So we placed a camera and a Spirit Book in the living room, and we placed the book where we could see it from the camera, and in the hallway leading to the owner's suite, on the side of the living room, we placed a second camera, and we placed a Spirit Book, like, right in the doorway to the owner's suite. We found the ghost orbs in the living room, indicating ghost orbs will only appear in the ghost room. They don't follow the ghost or anything. So we found the ghost orbs in the living room, but it never wrote in that book, but it did write in the one in the doorway to the owner's suite. So, I don't know. But that was kind of a one-off event. Usually, your best chance of getting writing is in the actual ghost room. Okay, so we did EMF, Spirit Box, Spirit Book, orbs, fingerprints. Okay, so I think the last piece of evidence is freezing temperatures. Now, this one is a little bit unique in your starting equipment does not include a digital thermometer. This is the only piece of evidence that you don't have an actual piece of equipment in the starting gear to capture the evidence. However, when it comes to specifically freezing temperatures, man, kind of spoiled that one. You'll see like patches of fog kind of appear right in front of you. It's supposed to indicate like you're seeing your breath because it's freezing. So you can determine freezing temperatures without equipment. You can buy a digital thermometer, and digital thermometer used to be really good for tracking down where the ghost room was, but they have nerfed the shit out of it. So now, because the whole house starts at the same temperature and the ghost room temperature slowly lowers, or in the case where the breaker starts off, the whole house starts cold, and if it is freezing temperatures, the ghost room will still lower, but you have to let the breaker be on for a bit for the heat to work, for the rest of the house to warm up, to find a lower temperature spot if it's not freezing temperature, because the ghost room is always, or, you know, it's a common accepted piece of paranormal evidence, the cold spots. So in addition to that nerf, where it used to be the ghost room always started out at like ghost room temperature, whatever that was going to be, and now you have to wait for it to come down or the rest of the house temperature to rise. In addition to that, there's now a 3-second delay. It's 3 or 6. There is a significant delay in the thermometer's reading updating. Or it used to be like instantaneous, you could spin around in a circle and watch the numbers change. Now it's a significant delay, which makes it a much less reliable piece of evidence, because if you're not like slowly and methodically going through, you'll like, oh, hey, I got a cold reading, so it must be here, and then you stand there for a minute and it updates again. Or you stand there for a little bit and it updates again. And you're like, oh wait, it's not this room. So then you gotta backtrack, and the thermometer kind of sucks now. But the thermometer was pretty easy mode before, so I can kind of get it. Oh, this episode's gonna be a little long today, but that's okay. It's the first one back in like forever, so that's okay. Anyway, so those are your primary pieces of evidence that help you determine what type of entity you're dealing with. Difficulty levels. Alright, on amateur, you have 5 minutes of setup time when you enter the house. The ghost cannot hunt you. On intermediate, you have 2 minutes. On professional, you have 0. So, theoretically, the ghost could start hunting as soon as you enter the house. However, that's kind of a misnomer, and we'll get into that in a minute. If you find a spirit board, yes, I know that there is another name for that. I don't actually know how to say it. I failed French. If you find a spirit board and you start fucking with it while you have startup time, apparently there is a chance that you lose the rest of your startup time. Now, when Sage and I find a board in the house, it's only like a 33% chance that it spawns, by the way. You won't always have a spirit board in every location. But when we have played on a level that has a startup timer, we tend to play on amateur. Every once in a while we get all bold and decide we're going to play on professional, but only on Tanglewood because it's the smallest map. We have never messed with it while we still had startup time left. So I don't know if your timer just clicks to 0 or if you get any indication whatsoever that you boarded your startup time. We'll get more into the spirit board and what it does and how it works in the next episode. Okay, so 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 0 minutes. Other differences between the difficulty levels. So, on amateur, on a quote-unquote perfect game, you get all 4 objectives, you get all good photos, and like max photo credit. You can max out at about $100 for the contract. Intermediate is about $200 and professional is about $300. Right around there. And of course, money helps you buy equipment. You also get experience, and I assume the experience payout is the same way. Intermediate's twice what amateur is, and professional's 3 times. But I don't know. I've never really paid much attention to that. And that's how you get your levels to unlock the higher difficulty levels. Let's see here. What else? When you die, you lose all the equipment you took on the contract with you, whether it was in the house or not. On amateur, you get an insurance payout for 50% of your lost equipment cost. On intermediate, you get 25%. On zero, you get nothing. Or on professional, you get nothing. For a while, when me, husband, and Sage were playing, I always stayed in the truck. So because I was never in threat of dying, I was the one who always brought all the equipment. So nothing was lost if one of them died. We'll get into dying in just a second. Okay, yeah, because we're on our last real significant change between 3 difficulty levels is the duration of the hunt. On amateur, it's about 30 seconds. On intermediate, it's about 45. And on professional, it's about a minute. And I know that does not sound like a long time, but trust me, it is when you're trying to not get murked by a ghost. So, how the hunt works. Once you reach a sanity threshold, you are below a certain level of a certain percentage of average sanity for the group. With 3 exceptions, that level is 50%. And we'll get into the exceptions in a minute. The ghost can start hunting. And you can do things to piss it off to encourage it to hunt. Some ghosts are more aggressive than others, like just by default, just by their nature. So, in a hunt, electronics will malfunction, like your EMF reader just spits out random readings, though never a 5. Your flashlight blinks on and off. Your radio, if you're, not playing with somebody sitting across your kitchen table from you, so you're using the voice chat radio function in the game to communicate, you won't be able to communicate with your team members. Lights in the house blink on and off. And that's how you know you're being hunted. All ghosts, except for the Revenant, move slower than the player run speed. So you can kind of loop them around things, but you have to take corners really tight, because the ghost, with one exception, will always take the shortest path to the closest player. So if you're not cutting your corners tight, and you're giving it small margins to close the gap between you, it will eventually catch up to you. Personally, I hide during hunts. Your safest places to hide are like regular closets, not walk-in closets or lockers. So during a hunt, a ghost can pass through regular room doors or can open them. It can also open the closet and locker doors during a hunt, but 1, you can hold those doors closed, and 2, if it does open that door, you usually, you have a good amount of time to be able to shut the door again before it can get in and get you. And if you're quiet, it has a hard time finding you. If the ghost catches you during a hunt, it will kill you. Period. There's no grappling with it. There's no chance of getting out of it. No, you just die. You see the animation of, fingertips curling at the edges of your screen. And, yeah, the ghost basically comes up behind you and strangles you. Even if it came up in front of you, the animation's always the same. If you die when you're playing solo, that's it. You get clicked to the death screen for about half a second, and then you get kicked out to the end of the contract screen. If you're playing in a group, you can still access your journal. So if you had not determined the correct ghost type prior to dying, but your group does connect, or does figure it out, you don't have access to your radio, so they would have to communicate it to you in a different way. Again, me and Sage's case, because we happen to be sitting across the table from each other. Does, however, mean that if we're both hiding during a hunt, we can't, like, call the ghost over because both of our mics pick each other up. I guess we could confuse the shit out of it, maybe. But anyway, so you would have to have another way to communicate, but you can select the correct ghost type before the contract ends, and you will still get paid for it. Also, you can interact with objects from the house or from the location when you're dead. You're like, basically, you become a ghost there now, and you can like throw cups and canisters of caulk and spray paint and shit at your teammates. So, exceptions to the sanity rule. Apparently, banshees have this super rare chance of hunting at any sanity level. I didn't know that until I was watching Insim is the streamer I watched the most, followed closely by Zero Wins, but he spells zero with an X. It's Xero wins. I thought it was clever. And yes, so technically, on professional, a banshee could start hunting as soon as you enter the location. It is incredibly rare, though. Demons have a higher sanity threshold. What exactly that sanity threshold is, that's tough to nail down, because apparently, like, the fandom wiki is not fucking accurate, like, at all. General accepted level, like, the general rule of thumb, I guess, is about 65% sanity. Though I've heard as high as 80. And demons are more aggressive and will hunt more. And the mirrors. So mirrors, if the light is off in the ghost room, they can start hunting once you reach a 60% or lower sanity, group sanity average. If the light is on in the ghost room, they cannot hunt until you've reached a 40% or lower average sanity for the group. Alright, so that's all the basics. There are other pieces of equipment you can buy and take with you, you know, like motion sensors I've mentioned. I think you start out with salt. So what the salt does, you can place piles of salt around the ghost room or around where you've seen the ghost pathing, and the ghost will pass through them. If you see the salt pile change, indicating the ghost has passed through it, and like you're right there, because it does not stick around too terribly long, you can use a UV light to see footprints, and it'll tell you what direction it went through. If you don't see footprints, you kind of know it's a wraith. Wraiths apparently fly. You don't see it in the hunting animation at all. Like, it's not like if you look at it while it's hunting, you're like, oh, that one's levitating, that's a wraith. The hunting animations are relatively similar. There is, with a phantom, they blink out more. When a ghost is hunting, it'll blink in and out. And if it's pretty steady pattern of in and out, you know, it could be anything. But phantoms in specific will blink off for longer than they blink on. So they'll be invisible for longer than they'll be visible between blinks. But yeah, wraiths apparently fly, so they don't leave footprints in the salt piles. But everything else will. The exception to the ghost moving towards the nearest player, taking the shortest path to the nearest player in line of sight. Banshees latch on to a specific prey. Like, they single somebody out, and that is their chosen victim. That they are going to go after that person. So when a hunt starts, as long as that player is in the location, they have changed it. So if the player is not inside, is like out in the truck, it will pick a backup murderer. is a weird little piece of equipment. Oh, you're tracking water line. Interesting. So, because banshees lock onto a specific prey, if you can determine who that prey is, during a hunt, it will doggedly pursue that person, which means anybody else can just, walk with it, cut in its path, whatever, and it won't kill them, because it is fixated on that one person. So again, as far as hunt speed, okay. So, again, Revenant is the only one that moves faster than the players. When a hunt starts, you have about 3 seconds of safe time. So, Revenants, when they are in line of sight, move slightly faster than the player run speed. They will always catch up to you. However, if you break line of sight, their movement speed decreases to, the player walk speed. They're slower than the other ghosts when they don't have line of sight. They have improved the ghost AI, so now when it loses line of sight, it will go to your last known location and see if it can reattain line of sight. If it can't, it just starts wandering. It used to be like a Skyrim guard. If you cut around a corner, it was like, oh, must have been my imagination. Djinns, when they're within 3 meters of you, move at the regular ghost speed. But if they are not within 3 meters of you, and the breaker is on, that's important. The breaker has to be on, because, djinns are electric-y. They can move at basically rev speed to close distance on you. But once they get within 3 meters of you, they slow down to the regular speed. So there are other quirks between the ghost types and everything, and we will get into all that in the next episode, as well as the spirit board and other pieces of equipment and whatnot. But that's all I have for this one. I really, really enjoyed this game. Highly recommend you check it out. If you would like to see content on it, again, Zero Wins, XEROWINS on Twitch. I recommend him, or Insym, INSYM, on either Twitch or YouTube. He does upload some of his, he does some videos of parts of his Twitch stream that he uploads to YouTube. Both of them engage in some kind of juvenile humor, but I wouldn't call any of it vulgar. Zero is a little more sweary than Insym, but Insym's kind of sweary too. So I wouldn't let your 6-year-old watch them, but I let Sage watch either one of them. They are both European, so they stream here in Eastern time zone, kind of early afternoon into mid-evening. I know Insym's in the Netherlands. I'm not sure where Zero is. I don't think he's ever mentioned when I've been hanging out in his stream. But yeah, I recommend checking them out if you want to see some gameplay and stuff. Insym does, cute and crazy challenges, where, the one challenge, which is probably my favorite, is the photo randomizer, and we'll get into, different things you can take photos of in the next episode, but he'll go in, and the only pieces of equipment he can have are his flashlight, which he actually mostly uses for his viewers' comfort, rather than his own. He seems to be able to navigate every map in the dark, and it's weird. And, photo cams, and as he catches, payable photos, fingerprints, ghost photo, yada yada, he spins a randomizer to unlock pieces of equipment. That's probably my favorite challenge he does, but he's played the game so much and has gotten so good at it that he does these random challenges and stuff to kind of keep things fresh and keep his stream entertaining, really. He does seem to still have a joy for the base game. I think the challenges are more to keep his content fresh and interesting and not have everybody basically tune out. It's like, oh yeah, and Sim's, doing a ghost hunt in the prison again. Okay. But yeah, alright, that's all I have for this episode. Hopefully I will talk to you all tomorrow, but as always, if you made it this far with me, thank you very much for listening, and yeah, after we do the second Phasmo episode, I will do an episode or two where I talk about, like, the changes that are happening and that kind of stuff. But, anyway, talk to you all later.